What's good, family? Smash the like button and subscribe. Wow. So your boy Tyson Fury has attempted at airing out, attempted at getting some get back against AJ after AJ, as we know, completely exposed his flawed middle class, well brought up character. Yeah? Just quickly, let's be under no illusions here. Tyson Fury is a good, a well-raised middle-class Donny, no doubt, 100%. Because what we do know is, when it all kicked off, when the uncertain and violent and volatile world kicked off, Fury refused to participate. In fact, he actively avoided any confrontation. When his best friend's dad, when someone who's highly respected and revered in his community, when an elder, an old man who can't help himself, was getting moshed, the middle class Donny, the true middle classness of Tyson Fury, exposed itself. Yeah, all that other stuff he's talked about, giving it all that deep bass. It's just like, to be fair, same as John Fury, all that deep bass was nowhere to be found. The one time we needed the one time Billy Ho Saunders' old dad, old and frail and helpless dad, needed some bass, Tyson Fury was bassless. He was nowhere to be found. In fact, not even just Tyson and his brother, his scary looking ass bloodline. Yeah? We've talked about hereditary and genetic flaws. Tyson Fury hasn't got the go. He hasn't got the go genetics. He hasn't got the go gene. He's got the stand and freeze gene. When it kicks off, yeah, when the world becomes uncertain, middle class, no goer gene, Tyson Fury will freeze, and his brother. And that there's how we know. People say, YB, how do you know? It's to do with genetics. Well, look at his brother doing exactly the same thing. And you best believe as well, if John Fury was there, we'd have witnessed John Fury, Tyson Fury, and Tommy Fury all stand there and freeze, because they're freezers. It's not even their fault. It's just been passed down from generation to generation. They've all got big mouths. Don't get me wrong. Yes. Have they been dealt a moody card when it comes to chin? Absolutely. They have the moody chin genetics. Have they been dealt a moody card when it comes to power genetics? Absolutely. But the one gene they have got alright is the big mouth. But having a big mouth with no chin, no power, and no go, you know what I'm saying? You end up watching one of the elders in your community get moshed. Yeah? It wouldn't even be so bad, but both of them, both two young, able men who talk about being hungry for squabbles, stood there and watched the elder get moshed. Meanwhile, some next Donny, who was about 5 foot tall, was straight over there, straight in. He weren't doing the maths. He weren't calculating. He weren't freezing. He was too busy going. That's why. That Don in the white shirt, yeah, whilst big for nothing Tyson Fury, whilst big mouth Tyson Fury and big mouth Tommy Fury stood there and froze, my man in the white shirt, Mr. 5 foot, who was so small, he literally struggled to get over the fence. He failed the first time. That didn't stop him. He didn't think, wait there a minute, I'm only 5 foot tall. I can barely get over this barrier. In fact, I failed jumping over the first time. That didn't stop him. Straight over on the second attempt to get stuck in. Do you know why? He's not a good middle class boy. Yeah? That Don there, he loves to be in, or he's used to being in, he's seasoned at being in volatile situations. The volatile situation that life throws at us, Tyson Fury and Tommy Fury have been shielded from their whole lives. We know this for a fact. Middle class Donnies, myself included, you're shielded from the uncertainties of life. And that's why what we do know is, when the volatility of the world slapped Tyson Fury and Tommy Fury in their face, they froze. Because they're not used to being in situations like that. They're used to being in situations where, I don't know, men sit down and have a tea together, yeah, and sip tea together and all that kind of stuff. All the middle class operations, all the middle class activities. That's what Tyson Fury and Tommy Fury are better suited at. Don't get me wrong, Tyson and Tommy will talk a good game, but when it came to it, who is your true character? Are you a well-raised, middle-class Don? That's who he was. Because there weren't no go in ya, there weren't no street in ya, there weren't no let's get stuck in ya. You was all freeze. You stood there and watched an elder in your community get moshed from pillar to post. Yeah? That's what we do know. Anyway, so I've given you, man, the long way around there. Point is, we know that the comments Tyson Fury's made against AJ is coming from this kind of background. It's coming from these recent events. For us to read out Fury's comments, which I'm about to do, but for me to do that without giving you the background would be naive. Well, not even naive. That would be unfair. It would be untrue. These comments from Tyson Fury are coming from a place of he's trying to get some get back. He's been completely humiliated and emasculated by AJ, because AJ exposed the fact that all of this happened. He exposed the fact that Tyson Fury and his brother froze whilst their #1 grandpa general got moshed. No doubt. Anyway, let's get to what he said. So Tyson Fury said the following about AJ. Here we go. Let's have a look then. Where are we? Fury suspects that Hearn and AJ were trying to test any lingering mental vulnerability by frustrating him with delays. Even when I gave a deadline, they kept dragging it back. AJ had his winter fight. Despite that, I still agreed to August 14th, even though that would have been me out of the ring for 19 months. They were up to their magic trickery again. How did that work out, gentlemen? I'm fine. I'm back on the Vegas Strip. In the first heavyweight trilogy fight since Holyfield Bowe and Ali Fraser before that. They knew all along that the legal arbitration was in process, and now they have left with AJ stuck between a rock and a hard place. They've done it to themselves. You can see they know that by all the whining in their interviews. I don't think they fancy the Ukrainian guy, Alexander Usyk, for the fight he needs. AJ doesn't fancy the Ukrainian guy for the fight he needs in August. And with their DAZN deal, it looks now as if that will be their last fight with AJ. USUCKS is a southpaw, clever, technically very good. He's smaller as a former cruiserweight champion, but he handled Derek Chisora, who is physically tougher than AJ. So while I'm absolutely confident to beating Wilder, I'm not so sure about AJ beating USUCKS. So there you go then. They're the comments that Tyson Fury's made. Essentially, the whole 10 minutes of this video, you can now see how the start of this video was relevant, because he's trying to, oh look, yeah, I froze, I choked, so let me throw an equal dig back at AJ now. Listen, Fury, there's no matter, even if AJ was scary of a 200-pound man, the point is, never mind all that. All this boxing stuff is what it is. It's boxing. When it came to it, who are you as a man, not as a boxer? Who are you as a man? I don't get what no one says. Yeah, how you act, or what a man does when they see an elder from their community being moshed. That's the be all and end all for their character. If you can't defend an elder from your community, and the thing is, it wasn't just any elder. This was a revered elder. Yeah, he was top of the line. Tom Saunders would essentially be the chief general, the chief Donny. For you to stand there, both of you, two young, able men who otherwise have a big mouth and love to talk about how they love to get it in and love to do bare knuckle. Your one chance to fulfill the bare knuckle promises you've been making. And you stood there, and you tapped your feet on the floor. And not even a little bit did you move forward. You froze. Yeah, that's you. So we can talk. Oh, AJ's scared of him. You wish that was the case. You wish. I've got nothing against Chisora, but let's call a spade here. Chisora was paid off. I spoke to him. He told me, listen, YB, I don't know how you know, but you're absolutely right. Eddie Hearn, give me, I think it was 200 grand to make sure USUCKS won. To not stick it on him too hard. I mean, you can just watch the fight to work it out, to be fair. I told him, Chisora, truth be known, yes, I've got loads of sources, which could have told me, but the truth is, I just watched the fight. Anyone who watches USUCKS versus Chisora knows that he was paid off. Because Chisora don't back off from no one. Never mind a blown up 175er who slaps and can't punch. Yeah? Oh, YB, he knocked out Bellend. Bellend's no good. Who's Bellend ever beat? Oh, Big Toe. Big Toe's not good as well. I'm sorry, Big Toe came up in an era, in the weakest heavyweight era, probably in history, truth be known. There's never been a heavyweight division weaker than when he came up. Just a bunch of stiffs. And that's why Vlad looks so good. Yeah? Because I tell you this for free. And actually, look at Vlad. Look how Vlad got moshed early in his career. Because they was the last of the 90s fighter. Like the last of the 90s fighters. The reason Vladimir Klitschko got moshed at the start of his career because he had to fight the dregs. These weren't top 10 90s fighters, by the way. These were like top 50 dons. The people who filled in Klitschko, they was top 50 dons from the 90s kind of thing. Vladimir Klitschko couldn't hang with the top 50 dons from the 90s. That just shows you how boxing's evolved, especially at heavyweight. There's a whole bag of man now inside fighting dons who would just cut through all of the current crop like a hot knife through butter because they're one-dimensional these days. These days, heavyweight boxing has become jab and grab, essentially, and everything in between. Or, sorry, nothing in between. Jab, jab, a bit of a right hand every now and then, once in a blue moon. There ain't no, simple as that. Even Fury, like, okay, yeah, even Fury's game. Apart from when he fought a blown up cruiserweight, but there you go, another example. When Fury beat Vlad, jab, jab, grab, yeah, nothing scientific. People like to make, it's shades of Ali, and Fury's like Ali. Ali stopped people. Do you understand? Ali stopped his equivalents. Fury ain't stopping no one. Don't get me wrong, he stopped Wilder, but who's Wilder? What's Wilder ever done? Let's not make out Wilder was some big scary dude who actually rated. I told you before what would happen. The first man, and by the way, another key thing here, I was the first one to tell everyone. I said, listen, the first man who sticks it on Wilder, he'll fall apart. And what happens? Fury goes in there, takes the YB's advice, and wins in devastating fashion. There wasn't one other person, there wasn't one other commentator telling you how Fury would win. Not one. Apart from the YB. You best believe. Anyway, where was we? We're talking about this goofy Fury Don, yeah. Listen, Fury. End of the day, yeah. Whatever you know what? I'm gonna leave that whole Tom Saunders thing to one side. Another key thing that is the bottom line in this case. The people AJ fights, yeah, are the same people you will never fight. So it's how much people like to take Tyson Fury's opinion as if he's earned his opinion. As if he's been in there and he's been defending his belts. And do you know what I'm saying? I don't know about you, but for me, a man's opinion, or the weighting of a man's opinion, comes with, what have you done? Do you know what I'm saying? What have you done to earn that opinion? Because guess what? You ain't been active. You haven't been beating all the top contenders. If Fury had been around here and beating all the top contenders, I'd get how he has an opinion. What have you been doing? You've been fighting a blown up cruiserweight with a right hand. Who really, I hate to break it to you, man, but I'm not even sure his right hand's that good. Truth be known, I'm really not. And I've always said that. I don't know how people like to rant and rave about Wilder's right hand. I'm not sure how Wilder's right hand would hold up to any other era. Because even in this era, the first man who turned up to win, he couldn't stop all of a sudden, Fury. So, his right hand's amazing. You don't get these accolades by knocking out bums. Who has Wilder actually proven that he's got a great right hand against? Because he couldn't stop Fury. And Fury, we know, is chinny. It's not like Fury can never go down. He put him down twice, so you've got to ask yourself now, wait a minute. If Wilder's right hand's so good, why is it he couldn't finish Fury off? Because, again, Fury's chin isn't rock solid. There you go. There's your answer. 2 times, so-called the biggest right-hander in the world couldn't finish his dinner. Twice. And in fact, the second time he got mauled. So, and another thing, Wilder didn't get mauled by a guy who's known as a massive puncher. Fury is not a massive puncher and has a suspect chin. And Mr. the best right hand in history couldn't get it done. So that, again, the YB's 100% correct. I'm the only one who is saying Wilder's right hand isn't what people make it out to be. It's completely blown up. It looks good in 2021 versus bums. It looks good versus people who are paid off to dive on the floor. Malik Scott. And that Wilder versus Malik Scott tells you all you need to know about Wilder. And that's how all of his fights go. Ortiz paid to dive on the floor. 100%. Yeah? If you watch that Malik Scott fight and think that Wilder hit him, then you're just delusional and lying to yourself. Wilder is a made-up entity. He fights bums, and when he doesn't, he loses. How about that? That's the truth of it. He fights bums, and the minute he steps up to someone, because Fury, yeah, people don't get this. Fury isn't this. People like to rant and rave about him, but what's so exciting, or what's so devastating as a boxer about him? What does he do? He doesn't, and that's the point. Wilder hasn't been beaten by some wrecking ball, some wrecking machine. He got whipped from pillar to post by a randomer, by Fury, who's not known as. Fury doesn't stop anyone. Look at the resume. Fury don't stop no one. Fury couldn't stop Wallin. Went 50-50 with him. So, if you're getting stopped by him, what does it say about you? I tell you what it says about you. You're no good. So this is all one big circular thing, but the point is, Fury's got a big opinion. Oh yeah, you're scared of Usyk. Even if AJ was scared of Usyk, yeah, you don't have the right to say it, because guess what? AJ's the one handling all of the prospects. Guess who fights them? It ain't you. It ain't Wilder. Wilder don't fight no prospects. Fury don't fight no prospects. Instead, what they've done is, Wilder's career is completely manufactured. Fury's career is 12 rounds and bore everyone to tears. What they've done is, very smartly, or some could say it smartly, what they've done is, Fury and Wilder have got together in a conspiracy and said to each other, listen, we don't fancy fighting none of the prospects coming up. Instead, what we'll do is, we'll fight each other 6 or 7 times. And I'm telling you right now, that's where this is going. Wilder and Fury will fight 6 or 7 times. In the meantime, we'll allow AJ to take all the prospects up, and in doing so, build his clout. So that when we do or don't choose to, we can pop our heads up, and AJ's made himself into this big commodity, and then we can kind of just piggyback off of that. That makes sense? Because look at all this time, none of them have fought AJ, but their clout goes up as a result of AJ. Keeping the, you know what I'm saying? That whole thing of, AJ versus Wilder, AJ versus Fury, that's been going on for years, but still hasn't materialised. Meanwhile, Wilder and Fury just keep playing tittle-tat. Me, one for me, one for you, which is what's happened. Fury gets one, Wilder gets one. I'm telling you now, if Wilder wins his next one, then my thing is completely confirmed. I'm expecting Wilder to win his next fight. It's going to be back and forth ping pong. And then they'll step up and say, you know what, we're ready to cash out now. Now that AJ's been doing all the heavy lifting, we're ready to step in. At which point, and let's say, for example, I don't think it will happen, but let's say, for example, Fury or Wilder does beat AJ. After AJ's taken out all the prospects, from their point of view, that's a good bet to take. Because you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, I'm going to get paid $100 million and I get the opportunity to take all the belts, because AJ's done all the work rounding him up, and I get the opportunity to beat the man who's beat all the prospects, so I almost absorb all them souls. I get all that clout. Wow, that's how the man who beats AJ, by the time he's ran through all these other people, Usyk and whatnot, will undisputably be the undisputed champion. Not because of the belts, but because of all the things he's done. And you get to, the Fury and Wilder get to do that by just fighting one man. Meanwhile, the hard work, guess who does that? Guess who's, like, what mandatories? What top 5 mandatories has Tyson Fury fought? None. What top 5 mandatories has Deontay Wilder fought? None. Wilder's been champion for 5 years. He hasn't fought one top 5. And even, you know what? Okay, I'll give you Ortiz then. You know what? I don't think he's top 5, but I'll throw you Ortiz just because you're desperate. And even then, actually no, I won't, because you paid him to fall on the floor anyway. So how can I give you that? The Ortiz fight wasn't real. It was paid. But let me play devil's advocate on myself here. I will give you Wilder versus Ortiz. So Wilder in 5 years, and let's not forget, every fighter really should be fighting twice a year. That's only once every 6 months. Like Floyd Mayweather would do 2 a year things, and that was considered, even then, that was relatively inactive. Floyd was really the first fighter to be doing this twice a year business, and that for its time was like, that was new. Wow, he's only fighting twice a year kind of thing. That's what that was. So Deontay Wilder, champion for 5 years, and he's fought 1 contender. There should be 10 contenders on there, because guess what? Look at AJ's resume. AJ's resume, you'll see 10 contenders. All of them, man, top 5. Every single one. Wilder, you don't see none. And I hate to break it to you, you can't even use Fury because guess what? At the time Fury came back, he wasn't a top 5 contender. Name doesn't make you a top 5 contender. Being a top 5 contender is, have you been around and who have you been beating? Beating Panini and some next Muppet don't make you top 5. And by the way, that's the reason, if you didn't know, that's the reason Wilder even took the fight. Wilder, guess what? Fury had to run to the US and stick it on Wilder. When Fury was in his prime year, 2015, Wilder weren't mentioning nothing about Fury. Wilder was saying, oh man, I got Povetkin and he was scary. Fury stuck it on Wilder and Wilder's backside fell out. You can watch it for yourself. Fury said, I want you bad, Wilder. And Wilder said, oh man, I got a mandatory in there. That's what he did, 100%. So that says it all. The only reason Wilder fought Fury wasn't because he thought, oh, you know what, it's good for me to get my first top 5 scalp on my resume. He was thinking, this will be a smart way for me to nick a big name and is finish kind of thing. He thought Fury was completely finished, or certainly finished enough to beat him. He found out otherwise. A miscalculation on Wilder's behalf. Wilder likes to make out, oh man, I did you a favour. I picked you up when you was down. Just think about it for a second. Think about that. What does it mean, yeah, for a champion to pick up an opponent when he's down? Isn't that in itself admitting that you wanted to fight someone when they was finished? Oh man, I fought you when you was nobody. I fought you when you was out of shape, 300 pounds. Wilder says these things as if it adds to the value. No, that there is a confession that he's admitted that he fought Tyson Fury at his absolute weakest. And that's the only way he was going to fight him. That was the only way Wilder was going to fight Fury. Because we've seen how it played out otherwise. When Fury was in his prime, Wilder had nothing to say. Wilder weren't signing no contracts. Wilder was trying to fight random mandatories and duck Povetkin. That's what Wilder was doing. No doubt, 100%. So anyway, I've gone a long way explaining this, but I'm not even going to get into the whole, oh, AJ doesn't fancy USUCKS, and it's amazing that Fury's got so much to say. And this is what happens to people, you see. When people don't have to fight AJ, they all of a sudden get filled full of life. They have so much to express and talk about. But Fury's just ranting, oh yeah, look, I'm fighting Wilder 3 times. Bragging about Wilder and Fury 3 like people care about that fight. Oh yes, look, Holyfield and Bowen, Ali Fraser, whatever. You're the first Dons to fight 3 times. No one didn't want the first time. Don't forget that. People didn't want to see this the first time it happened. Because Fury was finished and Wilder was doing nothing. At that point in time, please don't forget, the fight people wanted was AJ versus Wilder. That's what they wanted. What they got was, as you saw, a 12-round ball fest, essentially. A 12-round ball fest where Mr. Chinless Fury had to peel himself off the canvas. That's what we did get. Yeah? So, again, I'm not even going to get into this whole, AJ's scared of USUCKS. Like, if you believe that, then you're challenged. End of the day. And listen, this is the thing. I don't not believe that there are people out there who think, oh yeah. I've heard them. I've heard people who I even like say that, like, for example, Porky. I like Porky, but he says that, and listen, people are allowed to have their own opinions, and I respect, if you've got an opinion, it's your opinion, but either way, the point is, Porky says that USUCKS will beat, or likely even stop AJ. Me personally, I don't know how people come to that conclusion. I don't know where they worked that one out. He's too small, and he's just too small, and he doesn't have no power. If USUCKS was going to stop AJ, he would have had to have stopped Chisora, bare minimum. Bare bones minimum, he'd have had to have stopped Chisora. At least then I could say, you know what, this guy, he's got, you know what I mean, he can clearly stop a decent sized heavyweight, bare minimum. He couldn't stop Chisora, he couldn't even hurt Chisora. So how do you go from not being able to hurt Chisora to stopping AJ, who's another level above? And even Fury kind of, oh yeah, look. And this is the thing, Fury's lying to himself, oh yeah, Usyk beat Chisora handedly. Usyk schooled Chisora. What? Are you joking? Chisora was backing off Usyk. Chisora was paid and therefore backed off Usyk all night. Never once did Chisora tuck his elbows in and just start banging away. Because if he had, Usyk would have fell apart. And I mean, just watch the body language of the fight. Who was really stressed in there? Usyk was. Usyk was sweating and his face was all bashed up. He looked scared in there. He was thankful that Eddie paid Chisora to back off. Because the fight would have been over. So for people to sit there and say, yeah, well, Usyk, or even for Fury to lie that Usyk schooled Chisora, Usyk hasn't hurt any heavyweight. Ever. That's the problem I've got here. If you can't hurt someone, how are you going to beat them? And AJ's taller than USUCKS. So even if AJ turns up scary, which is a possibility here, AJ may well turn up and just want to be on the outside. That's probably what's going to happen. But even that game, Usyk ain't going to beat AJ at boxing. It's just not. There's no way Usyk will beat AJ at boxing. And I actually think it might be a good thing for AJ. If AJ starts getting outboxed by USUCKS, then it ends even worse for USUCKS, because I believe, much like the Klitschko fight, in the Klitschko fight, AJ was going 50-50 with Vlad for the first 4 rounds, and that caused him to say to himself, or something in the corner, someone said to AJ, now's time to go, because this won't go nowhere. So even if, for example, you man are right, and oh wow, AJ's getting outboxed by USUCKS, which I don't believe will happen, but if it did, it ends even worse for USUCKS, because, listen, either AJ starts round 1 and outboxes USUCKS for 12 rounds. Or he starts getting outboxed and after 4 rounds his team or he decides, you know what, this isn't really working. Just like the Klitschko fight, it weren't. It's time to go to work. At which point USUCKS gets stopped. So it's a win-win here. I genuinely don't see what anyone's talking about as it pertains to USUCKS. Where's his... I haven't seen his great performances. And, I mean, look at USUCKS' body language. Why was he so scary of Joe Joyce? Joe Joyce is a slower version. Joe Joyce is only slower than AJ, kind of thing. If you don't want to fight Joe Joyce, what planet are you on thinking you're going to do anything with AJ? So, listen. Fury is broken, yeah? AJ's broken. In terms of socially speaking. Socially, no one holds Fury in the bare knuckle champion column anymore. For even myself for a while, I may have given Fury the bare knuckle thing, but we've seen Fury flop now. So anything Fury says about AJ now, you've got to always remember that. Remember where it comes from. It comes from a place of being humiliated and emasculated. So all this stuff now, Fury is just trying to get his get back. He's trying to get, oh yeah, look, yes, I stood there and froze whilst an elder from my community got moshed, but look, AJ's scared of a 200-pound man, and do you know what I mean? But what Fury don't realise is nothing, or everything he says will pale in comparison to what he didn't do. Yeah? There's nothing, or the only way Fury will have some weight in his argument will be if AJ's best friend's dad's getting moshed and AJ stands there and does nothing. That's the only way. Yeah, the only way. But it ain't gonna happen. So, it's peak for him. And that's why he's feeling it. And that's why he's coming out with all these little digs now. Oh, look, yeah, AJ ducked me in. And you're desperate. Completely desperate. And you're trying to push this fight, which I'm not even sure is going to happen. I'm not even sure Wilder versus Fury 3 happens, to be fair. I can see injury or some other goofy stuff, is what I'm hearing.